And then also highlight what the other coaches, like what their gifts and talents are, because we all have different gifts and, we're all very different. And I think that's been lovely for me too, to say like any of our coaches are awesome, but what you're thinking about is the personality of the person you're going to hire. Is this a person who you can share your highs and lows with? And is this a person you trust and you want to like be in daily community? You want to be in a relationship with them.
Yeah.
That's what coaching is when done well.
You're listening to From Athletes to Mentors, A Legacy of Coaching, a TrainingPeaks series that takes you behind the scenes of endurance sports. I'm your host, Hannah. In this 6-part series, we sit down with top coaches who use TrainingPeaks to discuss their journeys. We'll trace their path from athlete to mentor, uncover the biggest lessons they've learned, share their best advice for new coaches, and reveal the strategies behind their most enduring successes. I hope you enjoy this episode, and be sure to check out the other coaches' stories in the playlist.
My name is Samantha Murphy. I am the head coach and owner of a coaching company called Evolve Coaching Systems. I'm based out of St. Louis, Missouri, but I think it is important to know that I am originally from New York, and I do travel back and forth a lot, but our hub is St. Louis, Missouri. So I became a triathlon coach over, I guess, a decade ago, 12 or 13 years now. And I started coaching. Actually, I kind of fell into it. I was an age group athlete from the time I was in my early 20s, and I fell in love with endurance sports because I wasn't actually an athlete. I didn't swim, I didn't bike, I didn't run for a high school team or anything like that. But when I was in college, and I went to college in New York City, I joined Lifetime. Nope, I joined not Lifetime, Equinox, and and I got into riding a spin bike, and then I was like, oh, this is really fun, and it really changed my life in terms of it was an outlet for me when I was hyper academic. I graduated second in my class in college, so I was like a super duper all straight A student, and I needed something to balance it out. So I started to take spin classes at Equinox. And then when I left Manhattan and I moved back to where I grew up in the Hudson Valley, I got into actually riding a bike outside, and I became an amateur triathlete in my early 20s. And I'm from not far from Lake Placid. And so I had grown up going on vacation there, and I had seen Lake Placid Ironman. It had interrupted vacations because it starts in 1998 when I am a freshman in college. So I had this like little idea about, well, I'm not like the fastest person out there, but I'm pretty strong-willed, and I love what endurance sports do for me psychologically as much as they do for me physically. And so fast forward to many years later, after I had a master's degree in education, I'd been a teacher for a decade, and I had a baby, and I realized like I can't live far away from my family in the Midwest and do all of these things. So I'm going to quit my job and be a stay-at-home mom. And that lasted approximately like 3 days. And I realized I needed to do something else with my time. So I decided to just send out an email to some people that were in the local triathlon club and say, I'm going to start coaching. I was USAT certified, and I had run some clubs at the YMCA, and I want to try and do this, and it's going to be a hobby for me. And that night I had capacity at 10, and it filled to 10. And it quickly just snowballed from there. I was really, really lucky that there's this interesting thing in St. Louis where there's all people from actually all over the world come here because there's Washington University, and I live right by there. And so one of my very first athletes, I coached to a pro card, and she became a coach for me. And it was just timing. Some of it's luck. A lot of it was a lot of hard work. And I would be remiss without saying that I owe a lot to the fact that I had hired triathlon coaches. And I learned a lot from them. And I saw what was possible if you combined good quality instruction with purposeful workouts and just like the concept of supporting an athlete through and through. And I wanted to do that. And at our core, we are not a training plan. We truly are a coaching group, as much as one can coach remotely, right? So we coach athletes all over the country, and even some in other countries as well. And while I would love to be in a deck every single day with my athletes, that's not what we do, but we We do have very strong principles and systems in place to deliver a high quality product that is well thought out, scientifically backed, high level of accountability. And really, it feels strange to say, but I think I did create something that has changed people's lives. And really, it's changed my life. And that's the ultimate thing. I mean, it's combined the two things I love, which is education, and endurance sports. And it turned into not just a hobby, but really a dream.
Yeah, and so you said the first day you had 10 athletes. That's incredible. And now you have 100.
I do not personally have 100 athletes. I think that's good to understand. So
Mhm.
what I realized is if you want to deliver a high quality product, you had to find coaches. I'm really proud of the process that I've put in place with the help of coaches. I think there's nothing that I've done where I haven't sought advice from either my best friend, who is an athlete herself and also a teacher, or my partner, or just I surrounded myself with high quality, smart people. And one of the third coaches I hired was actually, he owns a large marketing firm, and he was invaluable in growing Evolve. And I essentially, he told me what to do and I did it. And I think that that was really, really important. So I realized very quickly, if you want to do this well, you have to limit the number of athletes that each coach can take. And a question we get all the time is, how many athletes do coaches have? And the way that we base that is you can have a different makeup of athletes. So you can have 10 really, really easy athletes. And if it's your part-time job, maybe you can handle 12, or you can have 5 athletes that just are more attention demanding. And that's the makeup right there. And I really, I guess I'm a boss and a business owner. I mean, that's really what it's turned out to be. So I try not to micromanage. I try to think about myself as an athlete. I still have a coach. I'm coached by one of the coaches on the Evolve Elite squad. And I think like, okay, like what would I say to my coach? How would I manage that? And that has been really helpful. And I don't work in a bubble. I don't make top-down decisions. I ask all of the coaches, for input and feedback. And we have a very detailed system in order to become a coach. And that has been really, really essential for us.
What does that look like to become a coach for you?
Yep. Okay, so at first I was like, oh yeah, I like this, this athlete. And so the first coach I hired, her name is Lenny Ramsey. She's since retired from professional triathlon and is running and doing gravel. She was an athlete of mine. Like I said, she took a pro card very quickly, within 2 years. And she actually is a neuroscientist in her day
Wow.
job.
Oh
And
my
we just
God.
thought the same. I'm not saying I'm like a neuroscientist, but she could figure out the way that I put together workouts and the way that the process worked. And it just naturally made sense for her. So she was the easiest employee ever. We thought very similarly. And then when I hired other people on, I was like, oh, they actually need more support. She also is a teacher. So I
Okay.
think that was a huge part of it, right? She had taught at a collegiate level. And so we thought very similarly. And I realized that what doesn't work is hiring someone who's a coach from a different system who had never been an athlete under our protocol. And there was a variety of reasons for that, but we have pretty like you write a comment in TrainingPeaks, it gets answered. It gets answered within 24 hours. So you had to understand what that was like because not all coaches have that in place, and that's totally fine. That's their system. But we really, really promote high accountability. And if you don't know that someone's like looking and caring about you through the data, this is my spiel that I give when people call. Like we're looking for both objective and subjective feedback from our athletes. So your data piece is really lovely, but unless I know how you subjectively feel about that data that you created, then I only have one part of the puzzle. And I always like say this too, like if if you're not going to comment and you're not going to communicate with your coach, get a training plan because you're wasting your money actually. And, maybe that's not great for business, but the truth is like we want to do our job well. And the way to do our job well is just like any relationship, the foundation is communication. So if you're going to Mexico and I have no idea, and now you can't do the bike rides that I asked you to do, there's two things that happen. One is you didn't do the workout, and two is I've set you up for failure. And that doesn't have a positive feedback loop. So she was awesome. And I realized like, okay, we need more support. So I decided one is you had to be an athlete prior. You had to have done the workouts. You had to understand the expectations as an athlete. And then I put in place an internship, because it's one thing to say you want to be a triathlon coach, and it's another thing, or an endurance coach. It's another thing to actually do it and realize, like, oh, everybody doesn't turn their boxes green in TrainingPeaks. Like, this is actually frustrating for me. I'm trying to get these people to develop and they're not doing it. And so to understand like the motivation and the drive of the athlete and how to differentiate and encourage that, that was really important too. So they do an internship, and then at the end of that internship, they decide if it's what they want to do. Usually they do. Sometimes they're like, nope, not for me. Like, it's too much. I realized, like, I thought this is what I wanted to do. And then obviously they're certified by governing bodies. But truthfully, I think the internship um, is really important. And then I provide all of my coaches with continuing education. So I think that's really important. I think that a lot of times there's not actually enough quality information, and a lot of people can't go to a weekend session or Training Peaks University or all of those things. It just doesn't fit into their schedule. So I also provide that for them.
Yeah, it sounds like you have this like growth plan in place for them that can help set them up and also your athletes up for success.
Yeah, I mean, I want everybody to be successful, and I want actually endurance sports to be joyous and not a burden. And I'm not saying like there are times when you're like, why did I get myself into this situation? But at the end of the day, and I want them to be supported. I
Mm-hmm.
want my coaches to feel empowered, like they, and we have a WhatsApp group. We talk. I mean, we talk. I mean, we don't have in-depth conversations every day, but we're on there communicating. And then we have coaches meetings. And I think just, over a decade plus, I've learned what works well and really what doesn't work. And when we're interested in bringing a new coach on, I ask the other coaches, like, do you have someone in your squad who you think not only fits the requirements of like a good athlete, whatever that means, but also really is capable of being a good coach?
Yeah. And are all of your coaches, is this their full-time job? Is it a mix?
It's a mix.
Part-time? Okay.
Most of them, it's part-time. I'm full-time. I don't think you can do the level of running a business unless it's full-time. Full-time.
Yeah.
I mean, you can if it's like, if you have 10 or fewer probably athletes, but at the level that I'm at, and I have a responsibility for the people who work for me. Um, so yeah, it's mostly part-time for people, although some of my coaches are soon to retire from their day job and they will probably transition into more of a full-time role.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you have like an elite team, elite
Y-
squad. What is
Yeah.
that?
So I realized, like, I never raced at a professional level. I think that's actually something that I'm subtly proud of. I'm just a middle-aged age group lady who started this coaching company and have coached people to, high levels. I mean, I have raced at world championships before, but I don't come from like a name that would have been recognized. And now I'm retired and now I'm gonna coach. So what I did realize was I can't do everything. And I didn't want to coach at a professional level, not because I'm not interested in that, but because I never was one. So I don't know what it's like to stand on that starting line. Um, as a professional, I know what it's like as an age grouper, but it's a totally different ball game, right? Like, I'm not racing uh in the same way. It's really, in my opinion, and I didn't want to do disservice. So actually, when Lenny became a pro, I moved her over to a coach who I knew who coached professionally. Um, and she, still worked for me, but I wasn't coaching her. So I did hire three coaches. They're actually all European based, two out of Germany and one who's now based in Germany, but she's Swedish. And she is a professional athlete. And so that elite squad, the way that I put together the elite squad isn't actually, you don't have to be pro or pro hopeful. You have to have an elite mentality. And so what I mean by that is you have to be a person that this isn't just like, maybe I'll get my workouts done, but I'm doing all of my workouts consistently. I'm showing improvement. So you can be 75 and be on that squad, right? Because you can be all in for your 75 to 79 age group. And then they coach smaller number of athletes. So
Mhm.
max of five each. And they're doing a different, I mean, just to get into the semantics of this, like, some of our athletes are doing FTP testing, some of them are doing more in-depth form of testing, but all of those elite coaches are doing metabolic efficiency testing and just a deeper level of testing and like carbohydrate requirements, all of those things that you might be overwhelmed with as a like general age group population. However, all of my coaches know how to do that for all of the athletes.
Mhm.
But that's not what everybody wants, right?
Right. Do people self-select for the elite group, or is there like a process in
So
place?
there is a price point that's higher for that, right?
Okay.
So what we do, because clearly like it's a lot
Yeah.
more work.
Yeah.
So, and I want it to be selective too. So what happens is I'll have an athlete that will exhibit qualities and I'll say like, you are totally eligible for elite, but you also have to have the pockets to do that.
Mhm.
Um, and so sometimes or athletes will come and say like, do you think I'm ready for elite? But again, like the bread and butter of our coaching group is really not that, right? If I'm being
Yeah.
honest, it's really sort of middle to top. We have podium finishers. We often finish when we do team races, we're always on the tri club podium. But I'm really like, I love to work with people who love self-improvement. So that might not mean that you'll ever podium, but man, you're putting in the work every single day and you're getting your own little podium. And I never wanted to lose that.
Is that, did you start with that in mind when you got your 10 athletes, or has that mentality shifted as you've grown the business?
I don't think it's shifted. I think I've always held true to like the things that I believed. So I'm kind of philosophical about endurance sports, but I mean, there is research to back this up, right? Like there are most people that are attracted to endurance sports are kind of like they have an axe to grind, or they're like, I don't mean like revenge, but I mean like they're dealing with some sort of trauma.
Mhm.
Right? We know that that is true. Like they've done studies of that. And that trauma doesn't need to be big. It can be really quite small. But I think that the psychological part for me was really interesting. Like you have a person who is willing to go out and push themselves purely for the idea of like, I feel better, or I feel my mind feels clearer. Um, and so always from the start, I was interested in kind of human development through the lens of endurance sports. So yeah, I mean, I think that's always been there, but then I don't personally want to coach only elite athletes. So I
Mhm.
developed that squad so that I could have, a place for people to move. And then if you did get a pro card, I feel really confident now in the system that we have in place, because we have people who've walked the walk and can talk the talk.
So you're working with high achieving athletes that have these big goals of growing and evolving. You yourself had big goals, and you also have a daughter. How do you help them balance like their personal life and their goals? And did you, like, needing to balance your personal life and your goals and growing this business, support does that help support your athletes as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be really honest. I think Rich Roll said it best: when there's not really balance in this type of lifestyle, right? Like you got
Mm-hmm.
to be a little bit unbalanced. But within that, I think you can put things in place to be able to achieve beyond what you thought was possible. So, for one thing, we're not interested in sacrificing sleep, right? Anytime an athlete has told me, like, if I just sleep 5 hours, that's just not our
Yeah.
thing. That's never going to work. It's going to last a short amount of time. I only have one child, so another one of my coaches has three children, and two of them are a set of twins. What I have seen is that if you, again, I believe everything comes back to communication. So whatever stakeholders you have in your life, partner, children, whatever it is, they need to be made aware of what your goals and intentions are. Um, and another little fun fact is we mostly coach by time. And one of there's a number of reasons why you would do that, but a really important reason for coaching an average age grouper is because if you have a 4 hour bike ride, I tell my athletes, you tell your partner or your, whomever, I'll be back in 5 hours, because you got to build in a little time because you never know. And I think that helps people to not feel frustrated with the thing that you are doing. When my daughter was younger, I incorporated her as much as possible into my training. So I did all of my recovery rides and runs, towing her or pushing her. Um, I also, when she was little, I would wake up early and do my work, and then I would go to the zoo. And I realized, like, if I wanted to do those things, I had to make some sacrifices there. Um, and I don't think if you're training for a large race, you don't need to do that for the entire year. You might need to do that for a few weeks, but you also probably need to look at what your goals are. And I think we all get caught up in this like long course obsession in triathlon, and you can have a really fulfilling triathlon career for a few years just racing sprints if you
Mhm.
want. I think just having a plan in place, communicating to all of the stakeholders, um if it's financially viable, getting some help. And then I think like trying to find balance really comes in just being honest about the amount of time you can give. And because we do such intense custom coaching, the coaches can work with that. You don't have to be like, yeah, I can give you 2 hours every morning because they probably can't, right? So just
Mhm.
say I can give an hour and then we're going to set you up for success. And then, when it comes down to it, if you have to do some benchmark rides for specific distances, and so, you block those out. Another thing that I've talked to with my athletes is just a simple thing of getting a whiteboard, hanging it on your fridge, putting all your workouts in, and scheduling what those times are.
Mhm.
And so everybody in the family can be like, oh, dad's on his bike or dad's at the pool, and
Yeah.
incorporate your children as much as possible. Um, my daughter happens to be a musical theater child. Um, so she's like not super interested in like going for a run with me, but she's biked next to me before, and that kid has stood on the sidelines right next to me while I coach at many, many triathlons. And I try and take her. I mean, she's been to Kona, she's been to fun places,
Yeah.
and that has been helpful. But I would say communication is key.
So, in your blog that you wrote for us, you mentioned a couple values that you founded your business on, and you've mentioned them during our conversation as well. But your individual tailored plans, and then guidance that focuses on best practices. Could you talk about how you like are those still your guiding principles? Obviously, you mentioned you're still doing individual plans, but how do
Yeah,
you stay on top of like the new research that's coming out?
there's a couple things. So it's actually remarkable how much has changed since I started coaching, right? So if we just take nutrition for an example, right? So back when I started, it was 40 grams dual sugar source,
Mm-hmm.
right? That was like the benchmark. And now it's like, oh yeah, 120 grams.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been really exciting actually to watch. One thing is it is my full-time job. So I have the ability and to do a lot of research. And I clearly, what's really hard, I think, as a triathlon coach, and I'm sure other coaches can relate to this, is when you have an athlete come to you and they're like, but I saw someone on Instagram who's fast and they do this, right? So, I feel like part of my job is combating that. I mean, when I first started coaching, I spent a lot of time telling people that they needed to fuel because there was that whole like we don't fuel situation. So you didn't take in
Mm-hmm.
any carbohydrate, and so that obviously that research has really changed a lot. I read a lot. I listen to actually a lot of podcasts because I find that if you listen to high quality podcasts, they'll cite great sources and then you can
Mm-hmm.
dive into those resources. Um, and I also coach doctors, right? So I run stuff by them from their standpoint, although and then I have a registered dietitian that I work with. And then in terms of exercise science, I do think one of the huge advantages that I do have is that I have these two German guys that I work with. Their names are Fabian and Toby, so I can stop calling them the German guys, but they are at the cutting edge of that as athletes. And so Toby actually wrote some algorithms for some metabolic efficiency testing, and that has, like just surround yourself with experts who are really
Mm-hmm.
authentic experts and not just influencers. And I never pretend I know everything. You learn that as a teacher. When you step
Yeah.
into a classroom on the day one and there's, like 30 16-year-old kids, their number one goal is to like punch whatever hole they can into you. So you just like, and they're all, I love teaching and they were all really good kids, but like that's what they want to do, right? They want to prove you're a hypocrite or you don't know stuff. That's the goal of being a teenager, really. I never ever operated outside of my scope of practice. I am not a professional bike fitter. I have never done a single bike fit for any one of my athletes. I know what it looks like, right? And I probably
Mm-hmm.
could do it, but it is not my profession. So hiring a professional bike fitter who works with the team, and having really good partners and just immersing yourself, um, with people who are doing the work, and then not getting caught up in trends. I'm very thankful for the people who, they were like, I saw someone in my Instagram feed who I knew them, and they were swimming and biking and running, and then I did more research, and now I want to do triathlon. Like, I'm thankful for that introduction. But you also have to build trust in your athletes. Like, my athletes trust me and my coaches that we know what's up.
Yeah.
You can have people who are jack of all trades and masters of not one thing,
Hmm.
and I don't want to be that. I know, like, my lane, and then I have other people who work the other lanes.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, cool. I want to chat a little bit about how you came onto Training Peaks
Okay.
because and how that's worked for you. I mean, you found success just through an email initially. So then how did you get onto Training Peaks? How did you find it? What were you looking for when you first came on?
I mean, I'm a person who had that original giant red Garmin that was the size of like an
Okay. Yeah.
iPad. Um, so I had known about Training Peaks as an athlete. And then I was working with a coaching group on the East Coast, and they were using a beta platform. And when I first started coaching, we worked with them, and then it quickly, actually, the guys at that platform were like, "Nope, we're not going to continue this." And um, I had, used Training Peaks as an athlete, and so that just made sense naturally to me. Our athletes are all premium. We do not do basic at all, and
Hmm.
that's because we don't do training plans. So the
Okay.
features that are needed in to do your job and to coach, you need to have premium. If you really are going to comment on an athlete's workout, you need to get notifications.
Hmm.
And you also need to be able to plan in advance. So I need to know if you're my athlete, I need to know that I'm putting together this plan for you, but you have availability issues. Or I coach a lot of people that are ER doctors. I coach a lot of doctors. I coach a lot of people that have different style of shifts, right? So I coach, some doctors that work for 10 days in a row and then don't work for 10 days. I need to know all of that availability. Otherwise, I can't create appropriate workouts with the appropriate amount of rest and recovery and stimulation within the confines of that schedule. Um, I I mean, I've watched the evolution of Training Peaks happen a little bit as well. I mean, we're really thankful for the new Strength Builder. And I think that was a part, and I had mentioned that, right before it came on, actually, that was something that we were lacking, that we didn't really have a good platform for strength workouts. And we had thought about, filming all this content, but as you know, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, Training Peaks in terms of, you know, it, I think it's, if you were to look at any professional athletes Instagram and they show their training, it's Training Peaks. It is the gold standard for coaching at the level that we want to coach at. I tell people when they contact us, like, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of data. You don't need to worry about that. If you have any
Mhm.
questions about that, you ask us those questions, but you don't need to really be concerned with, all of the CTL, TSS, like all of those things. We will happily, we do sometimes Zoom on them and explain the Training Peaks nomenclature, but that's not actually why you're hiring us.
Mhm.
To like know that that's our job. We're happy to tell you anything that you want to know about it. But yeah, our coaches utilize most of the features of Training Peaks. I would say that the way that we coach, we don't necessarily build super in-depth plans out in advance. We build more of like an overarching structure, and then we fill in very detailed, because if you get sick on a Tuesday and you miss your workout, you don't move on,
Yeah.
right? You either repeat or we do something else. And it's, no human being is going to load like 16 weeks of something and then go back and change it all because you got a head cold and miss 5 days. So
Yeah.
while they build a roadmap, the coaches, and then hide it, the actual workouts are delivered 7 days at a time.
Okay. So you can plan really like what they're doing that coming week if they like, let's say they had a shift and they were working 10 hours. So you're planning
Yep.
all around their like weekly schedule.
Yeah, and like, I do this in like an interesting way. Like, I think about, like, okay, so if they had no parameters from like in their life that created a situation where they couldn't do the work exactly as I desired it. So sometimes I'll like create that structure separately, and then I will move those puzzle pieces by actually creating like a a training plan
Hmm.
or like a dual calendar that's like a dummy athlete. And then I'll drag it and I'll be like, okay, so now we need to move these pieces around, but also I need to remove some of these pieces because they've done a 36-hour shift. So I also, there's another way in which I use Training Peaks, which I think is going back to that communication piece. So we have constant contact. We can email communicate. We have a Facebook group. We have all of these different modalities for communication. But the one thing I know that every single athlete should be doing is looking at their training peaks. So I have a training plan, which is called All Athlete Load. And then I will create other workouts that will say Zoom meeting, link to Zoom, and I will load it into everyone's calendar. And then I will
Okay.
constant contact it and Facebook group it and all the other ways. But it's in their calendar. So it comes up as a workout. And they can delete it like once they've gotten through it. But all important information goes into Training Peaks. And that has been great. We're based in St. Louis area athletes, New York area
Hmm.
athletes. We do team races. So I'll create a Training Peaks calendar that is, like Rockford 70.3 was our team race. And so all of those athletes were in there. So I could communicate through Training Peaks with those athletes in addition to the WhatsApp and all the other things. But if they're not looking at that, then they're not looking at their training.
Right.
And.
So you really are using it like a calendar and adding in not just the workouts, but the important like meetings or races or.
Yeah, I don't even know why I invented that way, but I like figured it out and I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And then the other part that's great too is you can then like I can tell all of my coaches go in and type in post comments like check this out please.
Hmm.
And when you get a direct communication from your coach, you usually pay attention to it.
Yeah.
So the things that are awful about running a triathlon business or an endurance business is like kit orders,
Hmm.
right? So we can get everybody on board with ordering a kit and avoid like, oh man, the kit's already processed. I really wanted one, but I missed the deadline.
Missed it. Yeah.
Yeah, so all of that stuff goes in there, and I just think like if you're running this business, you have to have strong communication, and you want everybody to know what's up, and that's you don't want to have like the 10 people read the email and then
Hmm.
and we have a lot of athletes, so I'm not texting everybody.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then they have to just like look at one calendar and they're already looking at
Yeah.
it. So it just makes it easy. So you mentioned all of your athletes are in premium, and I think a lot of coaches would find this helpful. Do you build that into your billing? Do they pay for it? What does that look like?
Build it into my billing. So I don't actually like line item it out for them.
Yeah.
Like the coaching fee, let's say the coaches fees range between 250 to 450 a month. I build that in the sense that like I just know like what the monthly billing for Training
Hmm.
Peaks is and I just work that out. So it's not like they're paying 350 a month for coaching plus 995
Right.
for Training Peaks because also as you know, Training Peaks is variable based on how many athletes you have.
Hmm.
And then a nice little selling point, I just say like it includes Training Peaks Premium,
Yeah.
and additionally it includes Training Peaks Virtual,
Hmm.
which we are starting to utilize. I did do a meeting with the team for there, and integrating and moving people more over from Swift. And the selling point there is you're a premium athlete, you have nothing to lose. I mean, we can't do our jobs without Training Peaks Premium, and I don't want my coaches to struggle with that. There are some features that I actually think are should be promoted more. One is you can build a workout by heart rate and not just
Hmm.
by power. And so if you have a workout built by heart rate, it's not going to show up in Swift. It has to be power based. So let's just say I have like a 4 by 10 minute interval workout, and I want that athlete to do it by heart rate and not by power. You can do it in Training Peaks Virtual, and you cannot do it in Swift. And so we utilize multiple metrics. Like for one thing, not all of our athletes have power meters.
Yeah.
And for another thing is I want athletes to know how things feel, right?
Hmm.
So if your power meter goes out and you don't know how that feels, and there's just some workouts that are better power based and some workouts that are better heart rate based. And then additionally, we also do art workouts by RPE.
Okay.
And that you can't do in Swift. But, RPE workouts are really wonderful in the sense that, how you feel about something is really important in terms of your physical and mental feedback, and then aligning what those actual numbers were.
Hmm.
Um, and so we utilize all of those things in the workout builder.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so you're really utilizing strength virtual in like a lot of aspects of most aspects of
Yeah.
premium. Cool. So you work with athletes in person and also virtually. How do you foster a community in both aspects, especially in such like kind of individual sport? How do you like ensure they're getting the support?
So COVID, I'm very thankful for this because COVID did switch us from a like nobody Zoomed
Right.
willingly before COVID. I mean, and I still think there's things that like we want to do in person more. But okay, so there's a couple ways we do this. Obviously, fostering like as much of like I said before, I would love to be in person with an athlete every single day. So we deliver workouts just for that small 7 day time period. We also have very open lines of communication. So I let my coaches set how they want to communicate with their athletes with the expectation that they're kind of open for reasonable amounts of communication. So if you do get sick, you can text your coach and say, "Hey, I don't feel well." And then things can be modified from there. So that's another reason why you kind of have to be the athlete first to understand just like, oh, yeah, if I don't feel well on a Thursday, my weekend's getting totally changed by my
Mm-hmm.
coach. Um, and yeah, the coaches have to want to do that because it's like it's a lot of work actually from, maybe not as much as if you were like trying to do it, how much you were getting paid per minute. Maybe it's not a very lucrative job, but it's a really rewarding job. Um, so that's part of it, that high like changeability and accountability. And then we do include, I think the team races are so important for
Mm-hmm.
us. I think we brought 30 plus athletes to Rockford, and we tend to use larger, Ironman branded races for those because people will travel from all over the country. And,
Mm-hmm.
um, we run camps too. So I run a camp in Tucson in the winters, and athletes come from all over for that camp. And then we run swim camps in the spring. Those are great times to meet up with each other. But truthfully, like social media is huge for this. So I watched that happen, right? Where someone gets onboarded and they're an Instagram user, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, they're all now friends with people they've never met in person. In fact, I was just with two athletes in Lake Placid a couple years ago, and they're like, we've met each other, and they're like, no, we actually haven't. We just follow each other on
Oh my God,
Instagram.
funny.
Yeah, it was really funny. So I think that's a huge part of it. And then creating virtual things.
Mm-hmm.
So, in the off season, we do multiple times a week, we do training rides. And so, everybody's showing up for a ride on a Thursday morning or a Saturday morning, and they kind of get to know each other that way. Um, and I do like other little virtual things throughout the year. Like in December, we do a daily core and more challenge, and people all go on, we do that via YouTube, but people jump onto that. But I had to get really, really clever during COVID, and I learned a lot from that. And then we do team Zooms, so you also have the opportunity to sort of see people then. Yeah, and I think, if you like take advantage of those opportunities, then you feel a very strong sense of community no matter where you're living. If you are a person who just wants to do the training and not have that, that's also fine. We have people who never Zoom, who never do any of the virtual stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like such social media, I know there are some negative things to it, but I think it can be a really good tool for fostering community across different states, countries.
Yeah, I mean, I think community is really, really important. I think that's another reason why people do endurance sports, and it is
Mm-hmm.
hard to build that authentically. And I work really hard to have all of my coaches participate in the thing. So I don't want it to be the Samantha Murphy show. It's actually really uncomfortable for me. Um, I'm truly an introvert extrovert, which I know might be difficult to see because I also can talk for hours. But um, so I try to be like, okay, you're going to run the Zoom. Because if I wind up on the Zoom, because I have a teaching background, I naturally like just take over the thing because
Mm-hmm.
it's just my thing. And so encouraging other coaches to run those Zooms and do those things and not always be in charge. And then also highlight what the other coaches, like what their gifts and talents are, because we all have different gifts, and, we're
Mm-hmm.
all very different. And I think that's been lovely for me too, to say like any of our coaches are awesome. But what you're thinking about is the personality of the person you're going to hire. Is this a person who you can share your highs and lows with? And is this a person you trust and you want to like be in daily community? You want to be in a relationship with them.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah,
coaching is when done well.
that's good advice. Definitely. Um, cool. Well, what's next for you and your team? Are you racing? Are you going to any races? What does that look like?
So I do race still. I happen to have a little bit of my mother. This is like really a downer, but my mom has stage 4 cancer.
I'm
So
sorry.
I mean, maybe this is an important life lesson, actually, right? So I can't do everything, right?
Right.
And one thing I can't do psychologically is sign up for an Ironman, which is my love. Long course is my love. Um, I can't sign up for an Ironman and do all of the training and then not be able to do the thing.
Hmm.
And I'm not a person who wants to not do the thing well. I'm not a person who would feel satisfied with like walking the marathon if I'm capable of running, right?
Hmm.
So I have stepped back from long course because I do travel frequently to see her and be with my siblings and help in that care. She's doing awesome, by the way, but
Good.
you never know.
Yeah.
And so much like I think what I did when my daughter, although I did race an Ironman when my kid was really little, I'm sort of stepping back from that and I've been racing. I just decided I'd race some sprints. I did race a half Ironman earlier in the season and it like I didn't have the time to do the type of training I wanted to do. And I did fine, but I knew I'm capable of more. And that was personally as an athlete, that was unsatisfying to me.
Hmm.
So I'm sprinting. And the other part that's kind of nice is like just like when I started my business, actually, I had knee surgery and I didn't run for the first couple years of my business. And it gave me all of this extra time to do the thing. So I'm a project person. So I have a couple things that I'm working on in terms of some new business ventures in the pipeline.
Cool.
Yeah. And those are really fun and exciting for me. But really what I want to do is grow in a way that grows for my coaches. Like I
Hmm.
love the people I coach. I love coaching, but I also have a responsibility as a business owner. So I envision like the next few years looking like we get bigger in a responsible way. So we don't ever lose any of our values and we grow and I can and bring other people into this project that I care deeply about. And support them. So I see myself more, like business than I don't take on tons of athletes anymore. If you personally want to be coached by me and you request me and that's like your thing, then absolutely. But if you come and you're interested in triathlon or marathon or whatever coaching we do all forms of endurance coach. I know we talked a lot about triathlon, but we do all forms of endurance coaching.
Hmm.
And you don't care if it's me or not, then all of our coaches are great and I want
Hmm.
you to work with them. I would love it if I could get into the position where some of my coaches could quit their day job and do this full time. And I
Yeah.
think that is possible actually, with just a little bit of, yeah, I have some other projects and I do race and I love to train. Um, and I love the rhythm of
Hmm.
that. And I loved also if I have chances to like support or work with other athletes, I love that too.
Cool.
So yeah,
Well, good. Yeah. Good luck with your upcoming sprints.
thanks.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you started this 10, 11, 12 years ago in order to have some flexibility in travel, and now you can still do that, which is, I'm sure, helpful.
I mean, I, I have done everything that I like. I can't even actually believe that this is my life, right? Like, I don't,
Yeah.
when people are like, yeah, the Sunday scaries, I don't have that.
Yeah, that's
I'm not
awesome.
like, there are times that I'm like, oh man, like I do like dream big. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this thing and then we're going to get like 50 people to it and da, 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 da. And then I'm like feeling stressed about it. But there is that stress, but COVID was clearly stressful. I own a
Right.
business. I was supporting myself. And it was rough, but I figured it out. Um, and so I do have that stress, but ultimately, like I kind of do whatever I want every day. Um, and that's really awesome. And then I do nap a lot. That's pretty awesome too.
Love a good nap.
Yeah, and I could see myself like I did for a while. I coached Columbia University. I coached their tri club
Cool.
team, and I love that because I love kids, and they're like they're the combination of a kid who goes to an Ivy League and races triathlon is like my dream human being from a scientific psychological study point. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think I'm at a point where I can give back more in a lot of different things. So I have some giving back projects that are coming up soon.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
good luck with your business ventures. Keep us updated.